Good morning. You know, this past Monday was our granddaughter Mara's 13th birthday. It's hard to believe. She's grown up to be such a beautiful young lady. She's so very smart, very talented. She's a person of great faith. She's a wonderful granddaughter. But because it was her birthday, Marsha and I got to reminiscing about the day that she was born, her birthday. It turned out they were living in Dallas at the time. We'd come down to help take care of Luke. He was almost 3 years old. Mara would be the second child for Kelly and Andy, our second grandchild. And when the time came to go to the hospital, they went, and then we came along with Luke. Marsha had been invited by Kelly to be back in the room with her when she was giving birth. Mara was being named after Marsha. But Kelly said, Mom, I don't want to have to focus and concentrate on you, so just kind of stay behind me out of line of sight, and that way I can stay focused. She was trying to do all of this completely natural. Andy was her coach. And so Marsha was in the room, and Kelly was in labor, and it was getting exciting because we knew we were soon going to have our first granddaughter. And then Mara was born, and she wasn't breathing. Suddenly it was code blue. This room became wild. The door crashed open. There were 6 doctors and nurses. They grabbed Mara and they were all working on her. There were other nurses that were attending to Kelly as she had needs. Marsha suddenly knew that her responsibility was to be praying. But she needed to get out of that room. She stepped out of that room for a moment right across the hall into an empty patient's room. And there she found herself throwing her arms in the air and just hollering, "Oh, God, help us. Please help us." She felt a sense of calm. It was all less than 2 minutes. She walked back into the room, very under control. The doctors and nurses were surrounding this little bassinet, everybody working. Marsha didn't say a word. She just kind of came up behind the doctor and looked over his shoulder. He turned and looked her in the eye. They just looked at one another for a moment, and then he looked down and see her name tag on her, and it said, Kelly's mom. He looked back at her. It seemed to be a reassuring look. And then he went back to work. Marsha said, I felt like he was saying to me, we got this, we got this. And a little while later, he finally started to say, she has a very low APGAR score. We're going to need to take her to the NICU. She'll have to be there for sure overnight. They took her out of the room. Kelly was now being better attended. It was all so fast. It was just so crazy. And we were so scared. I was out in the waiting room with Luke. I had no idea anything was going on until finally they came out and said, well, it wasn't good. It was code blue. Mara's been taken to the NICU. The doctor told us we'll just kind of need to wait. Marsha stayed out there with Luke, and I got to go back into the room with Kelly and Andy, and there to hug our daughter, and we had a prayer. I then went on back out into the waiting room to be with Luke. She went back to be with Kelly, and that's kind of what we did for a while. This 3 or 4 hours had gone by. I was out in the narthex in the waiting room with Luke, and Marsha was back there with with Kelly and Andy, when the doctor suddenly opened the door, rolling in a little baby bassinet with Mara. And he went over to Kelly and Andy and said, your daughter is doing fine. She's going to be great. He then began to explain all that he thought had happened and what was going on. And then he came over to Marsha and he gave her a hug. He could have seen her name. He saw her name tag that said Kelly's mom. She hadn't seen his name tag that said he was chief of the NICU. He just looked at her now and said, your granddaughter's going to be just fine. What a night. It certainly was a night we would never forget. It turned out very well. And 13 years later, but when we celebrate her birthday, it always reminds us how important it is to enjoy every single day, to make memories, to simply give God thanks for the days that we have. You know, it is a great way to start every day. Start every day with a day of prayer, of gratitude, and thanksgiving. It'll make all the difference in the world. Have a great day.